blah, 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 blah. Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. We're continuing our conversation with Doctors Richard and Claudia Bushman. Claudia is going to talk more about why she chose to talk about women in her historical research. Check out our conversation. So tell us more about your writings and what you focused on.
When I went to graduate school, I decided what I was going to do was study women. And I was the first person that ever had thought of that to myself. Now, I don't really say I was the pioneer, but here I was a woman. Women didn't get that much attention in the past. All right, I'm going to think about women and ordinary women that were like me, and I could use my own experience as a housewife and the kinds of things I'd done. That would give me a measure against those. And so in this American Studies program, it was quite possible to do that. First thing I studied with any kind of seriousness was mill girls in early New England. And I studied them because they were the first sort of regularly paid working women in the country. And they were really interesting. And one of the people that wrote the best book about mill girls from her own experience turned out to have a whole slew of papers in a library that was nearby me, near enough so that I could take my little boy to nursery school in the morning, go to this library, work for a few hours, and then I'd go pick him up and become a housewife for the rest of the day. So I wrote my dissertation about her, Harriet Hanson Robinson, who's a person that you never would have heard of, although she was sort of a second, third rate level, this feminist and well-known in Boston time. So that's the kind of thing I do, but it's because of all these other circumstances that it worked to put it together. And when I was in graduate school, I also wanted to learn how to do women's work. So I did things like grow and process flax. I learned to spin and weave. I made cheese and soap and all that kind of thing, and all that sort of thing in the past that I was really glad to know how to do and very glad I didn't have to do. So talk about it instead of doing it. And
that soap making is dangerous, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you can do all kinds of harm with those things. But anyway, that's the sort of thing. But then, so I did that book on Harriet Hanson Robinson. It was called The Good Poor Man's Wife. And at the same time, I was just editing this book for Mormon Sisters for my exponent to sermons. So suddenly I had two books out. So from then on, I could do anything I wanted. And so I just did the things that came into my hands. And as I say, I wrote a book about Columbus, how Columbus, the title is America Discovers Columbus, how an Italian explorer became an American hero. It's Richard's title. I think it's a pretty good title.
Yeah.
But, the story of how Columbus becomes famous in this nation is unknown. It isn't from the very beginning. This was always a country that was from England. But at the time of the Revolution, Columbus was rediscovered by America. So to be the grandfather of the country, George Washington is the father, but Columbus is the grandfather. And of course, then all kinds of wonderful things are said about Columbus. And of course, a lot of them were discovered to be somewhat false. So they made a lot of Columbus that he didn't say. So what I say is that he didn't volunteer for this. You can't be too mad at him for being treated well in the past because he was drafted for that job. And then what else did I do? Oh, when Richard and I were going to work on a big project on farming together, we started to work on that, and right away I discovered a wonderful record of a farmer from Virginia who kept wonderful records. And it's from him, John Walker, that I learned the great deals that I know about Southern. So I wrote a book about him. And, I just do whatever comes to him. And what else have I done?
Contemporary movement.
Oh, I did a book on contemporary Mormonism.
Yeah, not your parents' Mormonism, right?
Oh, you know what that is? That's the name of a review of that book.
Oh, okay.
But the book...
Well, so tell us more about the book and what do you think of the review?
That was really fun to do, to really consider what the church is about. Did you read that review? That's a very favorable review. Anyway.
Yeah, Dave Bannock is actually a friend of mine, so he mentioned that I should ask you about it. So tell me more about that book.
About Mormonism? Well, I wanted to just say what it was really like. I found a reference a little while ago that said it was a fine book if you like the Mormon point of view. So indicating that it was a rather slanted book about contemporary. But I don't think so. I thought it was pretty fair. And I just really did go up and down looking at all the things that were going on, what I could find out about it. I thought that was pretty good book. You think so, don't you?
Yeah, it's as good as any book there is in contemporary Mormonism.
What were some of the topics you covered in that book?
Word of wisdom, staying in the church, all those kinds of things that are big, gays and so on. And where do we stand? And then the events that were going on, things that were being said. I did a 5-page thing, analysis of the proclamation on the family, which I think is a very interesting document, which I'm very interested to see it's not quoted nearly as much as it was a few years back. And I'm just watching to see how that goes, whether keep it as a major topic, made the defining issue of the church, let that go and come up with it. So that's the kind of thing. So now I'm working on my last book, which is my autobiography.
Oh, yes.
And it is to be entitled, I, Claudia.
Instead of I, Claudius? Okay, nice.
Which, of
I
course,
like
are
it.
written both I, Claudius, which, was the governor and emperor of Rome, and but also I, Nephi. So
Okay.
it's just a straight autobiography, tell my story. But it's...
Do we get any sneak peeks on this? Can you give us anything? Any good juicy stuff?
I talk about my courtship with Richard Bushman, which is fairly
Torturous.
Tortuous.
Let me just say, I've had a very colorful and interesting life. It's the church is really great for encouraging that kind of thing. I mean, when I say this, everybody should be writing primary sources. I hope you're writing some primary sources. You're collecting all these things. That's really primary sources.
I'm interviewing you and Richard, and I count that as primary sources.
Yeah.
So
okay, you got to write your own too. You have to write your own journal, which I hope you're doing.
All right.
And
I need to do better.
family documents and so on and so forth.
I have to say, when I was on my mission, I had a tough mission, and even in my high school years, I kind of had a tough high school. And so when I go back and I read that stuff, I'm like, man, you were just depressed all the time. I don't want to read that. I never write when things are good, only write when things are bad. So everybody's going to think, man, you had a terrible life. And I'm like, no, I have a good life. I just didn't write about it.
I will say one other thing that I did in this line was when we were both teaching at Claremont Graduate University in the Women's Studies program. Richard was chair of that. And so I was teaching them about Mormon women, which I do believe it's convenient. And somebody gave us a grant of $10,000. And because we were doing something, what do you do with $10,000? I do all my projects that are free or so cheap. But anyway, what we ended up doing with that money was buying equipment so we could do a big oral history program. And we did about 200 extensive oral histories of Mormon women in that area, or others that fell into the cat, and transcribed them all and put them into the library. So, that's creating primary sources. I really feel very good about having done a wonderful program. It's just amazing. They turned to pure gold. They're such wonderful things. Everybody's story, and it's
So you're all about primary sources. I guess I'll have to start working on mine. I'm a terrible writer when it comes to my own personal history.
Get someone to interview you on a podcast.
There you go. I've gotten Steve Pineacre, so I guess that counts.
as you have to take all the questions you ask everybody else and ask yourself.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Drs. Richard and Claudia Bushman. In our next conversation, I asked them why some scholars seem to get in trouble while others, like the Bushmans, seem to avoid it. Does it have something to do with living outside of Utah?
The trouble is, if you live in Utah, you're right aware of general authorities looking over your shoulder. And you can't do that. You can't write to please the general authorities. You got to write what you think is true. And it's just very hard to do in Utah because there's such a presence. You say you're writing a book or doing this or doing that, and they always want to know, what do the brethren think? And if you just get that in your head all the time, it's very hard to think clearly.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe to patreon.com/gospeltangents for just $5 a month. Patreon is spelled patreon.com/gospeltangents. If you'd like to watch the entire video, you can subscribe at YouTube, Patreon, or on my website at gospeltangents.com and click the yellow subscribe button for just $8 a month. PDF transcripts are just $10 a month, and you can get those on patreon.com/gospeltangents or on my website. I'll send those to you as soon as I've finished completing it. If you'd like to get a paperback and PDF, just subscribe for $20 a month at either Patreon or on my website. Individual paperbacks are available at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Gospel Tangents Interview, and you can find all of our past interviews there. Show your Gospel Tangents pride by purchasing a t-shirt on our website at gospeltangents.com/shop. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. You can get our latest updates by friending me at Facebook, or you can also follow our page at facebook.com/gospeltangents. Become an insider and you can see the newest videos. Follow us on Twitter at Gospel Tangents. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some of our great videos. Thanks again.